What's up, guys, and welcome back. And behind me here we have my crane truck, which hopefully you all know. It's like 50% of the videos on my channel. But today we are going to be fixing a fairly major problem it has, which if you've seen me lifting anything, you'll notice that it's a pretty unstable platform, which is because it needs outriggers. But that's not what we're doing today. What we're actually fixing today is a different kind of stability, which is the suspension. These leaf springs are completely sacked out and shot. If you look at the gap over here compared to the gap over here, it's looks like it's only a slight difference on camera, but it's probably 1.5 to 2 inches lower on the driver's side. And that's because 4 of my leaf springs are broken, which isn't very good, considering there's only 9 total. But we're gonna fix that today with some brand used springs, which luckily I have because I'm a hoarder. These springs came from under the truck that bed is from. The rest of the truck's gone, like long gone, but these springs are actually sort of decent. If you look, they're rusty and shitty looking, but that's only because of sitting since a long ass time ago. Let's see here. 2004. That's the last time that truck was on the road when it was intact. But these are actually a fairly decent spring. If you look, they got plenty of arch to them, and they're not broken, which is a major positive, but they still have stickers on them. So that's some sort of aftermarket replacement spring that obviously must have been put on sometime shortly before the truck was parked, so they're going to be good enough. But yeah, we'll get this up in the air and start taking things apart, and we'll see just how much of a fight it is to get the suspension off of this thing. Luckily, my U-bolts are brand new, so they should be pretty easy to remove. It's the actual shackle bolts that I am not as enthused about. But we'll burn that bridge when we get there. First, we'll get this up in the air and figure out some way to keep it in the air, seeing as how this asphalt isn't real conducive to jack stands. But, yep, new springs for the crane truck. That's the plan for today. All right, we got up in the air, and here's a good lesson as to why you should never throw anything away. Because these old junk cutting edges are perfect base plates for these jack stands. And also, these leaf springs are basically trash. So really, if you never throw anything away, you'll always have parts and tools to do whatever you need to do. But now I would say step 1 here is we're going to remove the U-bolts. Hopefully they come off as easily as those ones did, but they won't, because this is a Minnesota truck that's been driven on Minnesota roads, hence the shock being rotten in half, which is good for it. But these U-bolts aren't particularly old, so let's see what they do. Well, looks like they're gonna unthread pretty decently, so I'm not gonna waste your time watching me take them off. Alright, so we got these U-bolts halfway apart, got both the inner ones out, and then noticed a problem thanks to this being a narrow dually chassis cab rear end. That camera lens is dirty. This U-bolt is like super crazy close to the brakes, but thanks to the magical lifetime warranties and some black tape, this chrome swivel now identifies as impact. See, because the black ones are impact rated. So let's see if we can't send this on a one-way trip to Valhalla. Well, that was violent, but the swivel survived, so I guess my little trick with the black tape and identifying as impact did the trick. Cool beans. We'll get the rest of this off, get this axle drop down, and then work on disconnecting our springs. Alright, I got the axle drop down, and turns out our problems are actually way more severe than I thought. Turns out we have a broken center pin. Actually, let me rephrase that. Turns out we have 2 broken center pins, so our whole leaf packs just fell apart as soon as there wasn't anything holding them together. And then I was looking, so the passenger side was sitting higher, but the passenger side also is the side with the broken leaves. I had that mixed up when I said it. None of these leaves are broken, but 4 of these ones are, and somehow this side was still sitting higher, so someone explain that to me, because that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, it's a good thing we decided to do this when we did. So yeah, major upgrade. We'll start taking them off and get the old garbage out of the way. Alright, so I knew those gosh, can't talk again. So I knew those U-bolts would come off pretty easily because I'm the one who put them on fairly recently. And I know what you're thinking. Wow, wouldn't you notice the broken center pin when you did your U-bolts? And no, because there was no bed on the truck, so I just installed the U-bolts with it all sitting on the ground, so it was all pancaked together by gravity. But anyway, so we had new U-bolts, those are good, but I don't think the rest of the suspension has ever been apart. So this is going to be the real test. We'll see if the big Milwaukee has enough power to take these apart, or if we're going to have to use fire and violence and swearing. And see if I can't block the entire camera shot, because that's what I'm good at. Alright, wrench on. Nothing. Nothing. Let me get a bigger battery and see if that will do the trick. Alright, we got the bigger battery fully charged. We'll see what this does. I've had luck with this approach in the past. And I guess we're having no luck today. So, time to roll out the torch, and remember the golden rule, it can't be tight if it's a liquid. Alright, we tried the diplomatic approach, so the only option left is scorched earth. And I have very little acetylene left, so we'll see if I have enough gas to get the job done or not. Probably won't, but that's fine. When have I ever gotten a job done all in one sitting? Probably never. What the hell was that? That was weird. All right. Nice thing about these springs being bad and the fact that I have fresh bushings is it doesn't matter if I catch everything on fire because it's all getting replaced anyway. The important part is I don't melt these bolts because I don't have replacements for those. So hopefully we can get them just kind of red hot and they melt. They break loose. Because we're going to have a bad day if I have to cut these. Actually, we won't really have a bad day. We'll have a normal day where things go wrong and I have to go to the store, finish my stupid project like a stupid idiot. Let's see what that does. They were both red hot. Now they've had a second to cool. This one's still heating up. That was a strategy, was to burn that little bit of bushing. I don't know if you guys can see this, but we're actually rotating the whole spring by turning this. I'm going to have to bring you in closer so you can see this, because that's how seized this bolt is. It might have to come out in two pieces, and we might have to get a new bolt. Alright, check this out. Just watch this spring here as I do some hammering. I don't know if my hand was steady enough to see it or not, but this is literally going up and down with the impact. So that's not great for our chances of getting this bolt out. Alright, I came up with a new strategy. We're just gonna cut the bolt, or cut the spring, because I have new springs. I don't know where to find a 9/16 bolt at this time of day, so let's see if I can't do this one-handed with no safety protection. And the problem is there's a rubber bushing in there that's absorbing all our heat, so we're not going to get a good clean cut. Look at that fire right next to the gas tank. That's a great idea. Yeah, we'll just keep going. The faster we cut it, the faster the fire can go out. It's a bad idea and it's going really terribly. Huh. That's actually kind of a big fire. We might need to change plans again. Okay, thank you all for your patience during that brief intermission while we did some firefighting. But I got that cooled off and the fire put out, and it did sort of work. Didn't really do us a ton of good, but yeah, you can't see shit. It got dark while I was putting the fire out. But if you look, we got the spring separated from the bushing. Now all we gotta do is get that bushing off of there, and then we can heat up the sleeve and hopefully break the bolt loose, which is kind of the plan here. I don't think it's a good plan, but it's the only plan I have, because those bolts are a stupid weird size that isn't easy to get hold of. So we're gonna move on to that backside, see if we can't get the whole spring out of our way, and that'll make it a whole lot easier to deal with that bushing and stuff. It'd be nice if I was smart enough to take the tires off or take the whole rear end out of the truck, but that's a lot more work. So yeah, we'll see if the rear suspension is more cooperative than the front. Alright, well, it's starting to get too dark to film and also too dark to be running the impact in the driveway. But the back we had slightly more luck. we were able to get to the nut from the backside, so I actually already got that taken off. I just put it back on so I didn't lose it. But the problem now is the whole bushing is spinning inside the shackle. So we're spinning the bolt, but it's not actually doing any good. So what I think I'm gonna end up doing back here is the same deal. We're just gonna cut the spring off because there's a seam right here. So if you cut it back here, that pops apart from this. We'll at least get the spring out of here tonight, and then maybe this bolt will come out. If not, I'm just gonna cut everything apart and get new bolts. I don't know where I'll find them, but I'll get them from somewhere. It's a stupid plan to try and save these anyway, but that's what I decided to do, so that's what we're gonna do for now. All right, so it is now officially dark as shit, but I got that spring out, cutting the back apart, went about as easily as the front did. I mean, that's what torches are good for, is cutting metal. So we got that, and that was a big fight getting it actually wrestled from underneath the truck, but filming that wouldn't have went well. It's too dark to see anything, and I'd be blocking the camera for half of it. So I think we're just gonna call it a night, call that a win, and we'll fight with those bolts tomorrow night after work. Kind of sucks. I'm actually back working now, so I don't have near as much time to play with trucks, but we'll do our best and just work in the time when I got the time. So yep, one spring is out. The other one, not so much, but if you look, the other one's even more broken than this one, so that might actually be easier to remove because it might come out in like a bunch of different pieces. So we'll worry about that some other time. But yeah, this side's apart at least. All right, well, it's been longer than I care to admit, but we're finally back to this thing, and we're gonna try and get back together and driving again. And I think where I left you off, we were fighting with these seized up bolts in the suspension, which is pretty typical for a Minnesota truck. But I got sick of doing that, so I did some digging and some scrounging and some scavenging, and found a bunch of brand used suspension bolts that I think are going to be perfect because they're not seized onto the truck right now. So I also found some used shackles in my collection that we're going to put on instead. And now we'll just cut all of this garbage out of here and get it out of my life and not worry about it. So we're just going to put you on time lapse, and I'm going to get the angle grinder going, and we're going to do some extreme mechanical violence here and see how it goes. All right. Well, they are ugly, but they're out of there. And the angle grinder made quick work of it. It was like 5 minutes, even with a blade change in the middle. But yeah, I feel stupid for wasting all the time trying to get those bolts out. But that was before I knew I had these bolts and shackles. So that kind of was my option at the time. But this is just proof that you should keep a dozen parts trucks around and let your neighbors hate you, because their opinion doesn't matter when you save a trip to the parts store or waiting for parts to be delivered online. So who's the real loser here? Not me. All right, and installing all this new stuff is going to be easy because the old bushings are already pushed out, and usually that's a nightmare. So I'm glad that's taken care of. We got new race car parts, fancy polyurethane bushings, not because I need them or because of the performance advantages, but because the polyurethane ones were $27 cheaper than the rubber ones. So obviously, we're gonna go with the cheap ones. I built this whole truck for like the cost of a Subway sandwich. So, yep, we're gonna throw these in. You wanna grease them because otherwise they squeak like hell and they sound terrible. Something around here has poly bushings and it's bad. It's going down the road. So I'm gonna find my grease gun. We'll grease the shit out of these. They kind of just slide right in the holes. Then everything goes back together. So that's gonna be the easy part. I'll probably just time lapse that because put these in, bolt there, bolt there, bolt there, and then we're done. And then we'll move on to the other side, which is probably going to be even easier still because I'm not going to fight with all these tools. We're going to use the one true Lord's tool there and get that other spring pack, well, what's left of that other spring pack out of there. So, yeah, that's the plan. We'll get you on the time lapse again. We'll get this spring pack mounted up in the truck. Well, that felt dirty. A lot of those hand motions were fairly questionable, and I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to put that up on this website, but we're going to find that out together. Of course, we ran into a problem because nothing goes off without problems. All these bushings are the same size. They must be for half ton or something because they fit in the front of the spring eye and they fit in the shackle eye, but this hole is well, it's loose. It's no bueno. That's not gonna work. So I guess we are not gonna get this finished and put together today because I need to figure out what sort of bushing I need for that hole. But we at least put part of it together, the shackles back in. So I guess we'll be back in probably 2 or 3 days when I find parts that fit. Oh, the joys of working on 40-year-old garbage. We'll figure it out though. All right, so we're back. We got fresh hardware, we got new bushings, and in order to save some time and to save you guys the trauma of watching me grease another set of these, because I can't afford to pay for therapy for the 9 of you that are still watching the video at this point after I grease the rest of them, I put them in off camera. I ended up cutting out these old springs with an angle grinder because it was quick. And I time-lapsed that. We'll put that after this little segment. And then I put this set of springs in just because this video feels like it's getting long already. So, yeah, we got new hardware. We got better shackles. We got a different spring. And we just got to put this other one in and bolt the axle back in, and we'll be good to go. All right, I was just setting up the tripod, and I already remembered one thing that I was going to tell you guys. And that is when you're putting these springs together, you know, it's kind of a natural instinct to put the bolt head facing out because it looks prettier. And you'll want to try and do it on all 3 bolts, but that doesn't work. When you do the rear shackle, you have to put the bolt in backwards because unless you have exactly the right length bolt you need, you know, to stop right at the nut. Otherwise, there's a little flange here, and when the suspension flexes, what's sticking out of this nut will catch that, and then you won't get any travel out of your shackle, and kind of defeats the whole purpose. And when I put this together, I did it kind of out of order. I put the shackle on the spring shackle on the perch first, and then I tried to put the spring to the shackle, but obviously there's not 4.5 inches of room between here and there, so I had to take it all apart again. And I was just starting to do that over here because I already had this shackle in place, but thankfully I remembered the fight I did on that side. So we're going to take this out and we'll put this on the spring first, and then we'll put the whole spring and shackle in together as one sort of unit. So yeah, if you're following along at home, and God forbid using this as a tutorial, which you shouldn't, it's this should be more considered infotainment, even though it's neither informative or entertaining. So it's kind of just stupid, I guess, is how I would describe my videos. But yeah, if you're following along at home, put the shackle on the spring first, or you're gonna have a bad time. So we got all our bolts in and started, 1, 2, and 3. And I remembered one more little tech tip, which again, if you're coming to my advice, you must be desperate. But when you're putting all these in, make sure you don't actually tighten any of the bolts until they're all in, because once you tighten everything down, the shackle and the spring eye, none of that's going to want to flex anymore, because it's made to flex with, you know, 6,000 pounds of truck and 2,000 pounds of payload in it. So you kind of want them tight for tightness reasons. But yeah, if you tighten them down too early, you're not going to get any of this started, and you're just going to fight with it. So all that's left to do now is run these 3 bolts in, and then we can start working on realigning the axle, which I'm sure will be a real treat. Well, here's another tech tip for you guys. Don't be an idiot like me and put both your springs on backwards, because I measured the red truck, and it was 30 inches from the front of the spring to the center pin, and then at the back it was 26 inches. But now measuring a different 1 ton I have here, because the rear axle wasn't lining up properly, we are 26 inches from the front to the center, and we are in fact more than 28, so 30 inches from the back to the center. So that means we put our springs on backwards, which means I get to take that all apart and flip them around and then put them back in again. So yeah, that wasn't smart of me. I probably should have measured in the first place, but I didn't because it was quicker not to. So about a half hour later, and 90% of our daylight, and also busting up my knuckle, we're finally back to where we started with all the bolts in, except for this time the springs are the right orientation. So the axle's going to sit where it belongs, which is nice. So we got that figured out, and I went and found our impact rated swivel here, and if you notice, we're kind of starting to lose our certification, but the nice thing about this kind of impact swivel is when they start to get weak and lose their rating, I suppose that's the word for it, start to lose your rating, you take a roll of new impact rating and you fix it real quick. Boom. Just like that, we now have an impact rated swivel again. See? The impact socket is black, the impact swivel is now also black. So, we'll see if the tape keeps us from sending this thing to Valhalla while we tighten these U-bolts down. But we're going to time-lapse again putting the axle in like I started to do before I found out that I'm stupider than you realized. Well, we got everything sort of semi-loosely started here, and noticed one issue that I didn't even think of, which is now our U-bolts are significantly longer than they need to be, because we got threads sticking out still, and we got to go up probably 4 inches with the bottom of this, and that is entirely my fault, because bear with me here. These old springs had overloads on them, which overload is that extra spring here, so that once your main pack of springs start to flex down, these overloads, oh, that's too bright, that's drowning everything out. Slightly better. Okay, so once the big main pack starts to flatten out, these overloads actually end up hitting this bracket here and that bracket back there, and basically it's an extra little bit of oomph for when you have heavy stuff in the bed. But I forgot to install those, and it's a little late now, so we are just gonna roll without them. This thing's a straight 6. I don't want to be hauling anything heavy enough to need overload springs anyway, because I'm going to be doing it at about 45 miles an hour. So, I think what we'll end up doing is just tightening up these U-bolts as much as we can with the socket, and then we'll cut off what's left over, and then tighten them up again, and if we need to, we'll cut off what's left over again, and then we'll tighten them up until... shoot, come on. We'll tighten them up until that's tight, and that's tight. So, not a major setback, but a setback nonetheless. Exactly what I said I was going to do. Tighten them up, cut them off, tighten them up again. I kind of got this one off the center plate, so we're gonna have to loosen it up and get it seated back in there. But basically that's the gist of what we're doing. We're just tightening the U-bolts, cutting them shorter, and then tightening them again so the socket can reach. Got the socket stuck. I'm gonna pry that out of there, but I think I'm gonna be done filming this, and we'll just put it back together and come back when it's time to set this on the ground and see if we actually gained back any clearance or not. So yeah, we'll come back later when it's light out, because it's dumb trying to record by flashlight. All right, guys, we are back, burning daylight after work again. But after I cut the cameras off last night, I went ahead and buttoned things up here. Got the springs bolted in with pretty much no problems, except for this one didn't want to seat quite well. If you look, there's a little bit of gap at the bottom of the spring between the perch. And there's not a lot of room in there. All I can really swing is like a 4-pound hammer. And there must be some sand or rust underneath that center pin. So I'm hoping what we can do is, instead of hitting it with a 4-pound hammer, we're going to take it for a drive and see if hitting it with a 5,000-pound hammer, bouncing up and down and rattling, will seat that in place. And if it doesn't, we're going to end up pulling that spring pack out again and trying to clean up underneath it and then reseating it. But I really don't want to do that, so I'm hoping my 5,000-pound hammer idea fixes that. And then some of you might be shocked to find out I also replaced the shocks. So hopefully this fine cowboy Cadillac will actually ride like one. And if you look, these new springs, even though they're just another set of stock springs out of a different two-wheel drive, made a huge difference. If you remember from the beginning of the video, we had about that much clearance. So we doubled our tire to bed clearance, got probably another 2 inches out of it, which is nice. So it's sitting higher. Hopefully the fact that this side springs aren't broken anymore will gain us some load capacity back that we lost. And what was the third thing? And a third thing that is TBD. Oh, I don't remember what the other good thing was, but I did maybe create another problem. If you've seen in the videos where I'm lifting things with the crane, this truck tends to lean side to side pretty bad because I don't have any outriggers. Before, with such a small gap between the bed and the tire, what would happen is the bed would lean over and it would set right on top of the tires, turning the tires into my outriggers. But now that we have more clearance, that means we're probably going to have more lean, which means maybe outriggers are going to be the next project. We'll see about that, see how bad it does, but it's going to need outriggers eventually anyway, or maybe more than eventually. Soon it needs outriggers. So there, it's on the list. But yeah, we're going to go just take it for a gentle drive here. Nothing too crazy, so I don't rip the axle out from under it, but we'll see if it rides any better with these new springs and new shocks, and hopefully get that one set where it should be. And I'm also just now realizing I didn't do a before and after ride comparison, which I guess you'll just have to take my word for it. If any of you guys ever played the Oregon Trail game with, the old covered wagons, just imagine how one of those would probably ride back in 1863. And you're probably pretty close to what this thing rode like with broken suspension and blown out shocks. So yeah, we'll go take it for a drive and see how she rides. All right, we got you set up on the old hat camera here. And I wouldn't say it rides good. It's still a 40-year-old truck that's made to haul thousands of pounds in the bed. So it's still stiff, but I would say it's a lot smoother, if that makes any sense. You're planted from the springs being so heavy, but it's kind of a gentle up and down, smooth motion now, whereas before it was kind of a every time you hit a bump, And I didn't do the front shocks, but I have them in the passenger seat here with all the trash from our new hardware. So we'll probably replace those, and I think it'll ride really good. But new springs, definitely an improvement. So thanks for being around this part of the video. Thanks for watching, and I guess we'll have to catch you in the next one as we ride into the sunset. Oh, and for those of you wondering, my idea of the 5,000-pound hammer, looks like it totally worked. We are seated, so I'm just going to tighten up these U-bolts, and we're ready to ride.